My next guest is not only one of the top featherweight contenders in the country, but he also happens to be an MMA commentator for the same promotion he fights in. You can catch his next fight at Cage Warriors 173. That happens on June 7th. Damon Wilson joins me today. Damon, appreciate you showing up. Thank you for doing this. I know we got a lot of things going on, especially with you in camp right now.
Yes, sir. I appreciate you having me on. I love the show.
Well, thank you very much. And I'm a fan of you. I love watching you fight. And I wanted to pick on a very unique question for you. Being a prize fighter, that sounds very glamorous to a lot of people, but the more I have talked to you guys from all over the world, I have found out it's not as glamorous as what it seems. Most of y'all are working full-time jobs. Training is another full-time job. And now you're a special level of psycho because now you're doing commentary work on top of two other full-time jobs that you already have. What got you into commentary work based off of everything else that's on your plate? Because that's very unique.
Yeah, the commentary gig, I just kind of threw that out there. After my last fight back in June of 2023, I knew I was going to go on a little bit of a layoff. And so I got in the ear of Graham and Ian Dean, those guys at Cage Warriors, and just kind of let them know. I was like, hey, if you need to bring me on into the booth, I'm your guy. And they kind of laughed at me, to be honest with you. But it's always something that I kind of wanted to do. And obviously, fighting doesn't last forever, but I'd like to be involved in the sport for as long as I can. So, maybe when the wheels fall off, that's something I can do down the road. So I just wanted to kind of, wet my whistle in the commentary game. And I ended up, they must have had some guys fall out or something. I don't think I was their first choice because, like I said, they laughed me off when I said it. And then I got a call a couple days before that event, and they were like, hey, you're in the booth. And I was like, all right, what do you mean? Maybe just coming in and doing one fight or something? They're like, no, you got all 12 fights. I was like, all right, let's go. Throw me in the weeds and see what I can do. So, but no, it was really enjoyable. And like I said, I was kind of on some off time. So it was nice to be able to stay involved with Cage Warriors and be able to, just be involved with the fans and whatnot.
A lot of retired fighters call fights, but it's rare that we see active fighters call fights. Now, Paul Felder is one guy that comes to mind. When he was active, he was doing commentary work for UFC. And there was one of my favorite moments of all time with Paul Felder. He was calling a fight and he goes into the cage to interview Dan Hooker, and Dan Hooker calls him out while he's holding the mic up next to his face. Are there unique challenges with you being an active fighter that you kind of have to balance when you're getting ready to call a show?
Yeah, like I said, this was my first experience with it, so I'm just kind of starting to figure that stuff out. But yeah, I remember that moment that Hooker called Felder out, and it was a little bit uncomfortable, because he wasn't, you got to have that professional side, but you're also, at the core a fighter. So I suppose the balance is a little bit hard. My teammate Dominic Cruz, he kind of deals with that quite a bit. He tends to get called out in the booth quite a bit. But yeah, I'm still new enough in it to where I haven't really experienced that a whole lot. But I did commentate my opponent's last fight. So, I didn't know that I was going to be taking him on in the future by any means, but here we are. So, yeah, I guess that's something you got to kind of deal with if you're going to be an active fighter and commentate.
Completely understand. When I think about you, you're 8 fights into your pro career and you're still a really young guy. You're in your early 30s. I still don't think you're in your athletic prime quite yet. And what's also really interesting about you, 8 fights, you're talking about a guy that's just entering their athletic prime, but you don't really have a lot of miles on you. Do you think that gives you you're primed to really make a serious tear in the amount of time that you have left in your fighting career?
Man, you're speaking exactly what I've been thinking in my head for a while, man. I've been waiting for these early to mid 30s, and with MMA fighters, a lot of times that is their prime. And you talked about mileage, some guys that get into these, fights when they're 18 years old and have a pretty active career through their 20s. They do carry some mileage, and the wear and tear starts to take a toll on them. So yeah, as far as that goes, I agree. I haven't really taken too much damage in there. you know, in my past, in my wrestling career, I had some surgeries and whatnot, but that's a little bit different. And that stuff's kind of, I think made me better. You know, I've got through some stuff where I know how to take care of the body better. I know how to, you know, rehab and prehab and do all these things to keep my body in check. So yeah, I think I am coming into my prime. I just turned 31 this past month. And, you know, at this point, I would have liked to have maybe a little more, maybe a couple more fights. You know, obviously I would have liked to be in the UFC by now, but you know that I've learned to slow down and enjoy the journey and enjoy the process. You hear it all the time, you know, but it's the truth. You know, if you're not enjoying it, then it tends to take a toll on you in a negative way. So I'm just trying to you know, get better every day. And I think I'm doing that. And I do think I'm coming in my athletic prime to where we're going to be seeing some real improvements inside the cage, not just in the practice room, but actually inside the cage under the lights.
Cage Warriors 155. You fought a really tough guy, John De Jesus. I've seen this guy compete for a number of years. He fought in Bellator. He's fought in Cage Warriors before. He's fought in LFA. He's fought basically everywhere. That was a tough fight. And I look at John, and you're not the only person I know that's gone up against him. I've talked to a few other guys. I've also fought him. And the same, every single person that's fought John has told me the same thing. This guy is tough as hell. And people don't give that guy the respect that he deserves. A tough fight. And for you, it's been almost a year since you fought John. I'm sure you've watched that fight a billion times. When you go back with a fresh pair of eyes now, what do you see about that performance? What were some of the things that you didn't like? And what were some of the things that you looked at and you're like, you know what? These are the things that we can improve upon.
Yeah, I've had to sit on that one for a while now, and I have rewatched it several times. You know, honestly, that was one of these things where I was a bit run down. You know, obviously I don't want to make excuses. You know, I was prepared. I was disciplined through camp. I was in shape and ready to go, but I was a bit beat down just from back to back to back to back training camps. I was in a rush. I was in a rush to get to the UFC, and I was trying to rack up wins as quickly as possible. And I wanted to take on good opponents like John, a veteran in the sport. And you know, I think I went into that fight with a couple injuries that kind of nullified my wrestling and grappling a little bit through camp. And to be honest with you, I thought that I could just beat him up on the feet, and that was my mindset going in. And obviously, that didn't pan out. I think he was a little faster and a little longer than I even suspected. I knew he was going to be, but he was even a little faster and longer than I suspected him to be. And I went in there and tried to technically fight him on the feet, and that was the wrong choice. And by the time it was, you know, my coach started getting in my ear and let me know that I needed to turn this into a brawl, it was a bit too late. You know, I came on a little bit in the third round and started brawling a little bit, but it was just too late. The damage was done. But yeah, I looking back on it, there's several things that I could correct, and you know, we can sit here all day and talk about that, but it is what it is. And I think, you know, I always say amor fati, love of fate. You know, that was my fate to get my ass whooped that night so that I can come back stronger and better, and that's what I intend to do.
Well, we have a new year and a new opponent. His name's Brandon Carrillo. This is a guy that I have to be honest with you. I haven't heard a whole bunch from this guy. I think I've only seen him fight once before. Is at Cage Warriors 165, and he lost that fight against Corvin Allen. What do you see about this guy? What is it about this opponent that has your interest? Because I'd imagine you're the type of guy that you're not going to take every single name that comes across your desk. You're probably selective about who it is that you decide to square off with.
Well, I mean, yes and no, but believe it or not, I really don't say no to anybody. I mean, when a name comes across my phone, I pretty much say yes. I'm a firm believer in, like, if you're going to be the best, you got to beat the best, you know. And I think, you know, seeking out the best competition, not to mention I've had several people turn me down, you know, every fight camp. I get people turning me down. I had a few before Carrillo took the fight, turn me down. So I rarely say no. I don't know if I've ever said no. But I know Brandon well. Brandon trains out of San Diego here. I trained with him back in 2021. Long story short, we had our gym shut down in COVID, and Coach Herman over there at Game Bread, where Carrillo trains at, was kind enough to allow us to come and train in their gym for a little bit. That was before my debut with Cage Warriors, and so I got a lot of training in with those guys, and I got respect for them. And when his name came across my phone, I was already saying yes, and it just happened to be a guy that I know pretty well. And it's the fight game. It's all business at the end of the day, and I did commentate that fight that he fought on Cage Warriors as well. So he's a guy that's going to show up game ready to go. He doesn't have a lot of experience. So this is actually one of the only fights where like I have the experience. So it's kind of nice. I feel somewhat of even though I'm only 6-2, I feel somewhat of a veteran in there, especially with Cage Warriors. My whole career's been with Cage Warriors. So when I show up to these fight cards, I've been on these cards more than anyone on there. So I've got a little bit of that veteran feel, and definitely hold the experience over Brandon in this fight. And I think that's going to play a major factor.
Do you believe, Damon, that you have like a major grappling advantage over your opponent? Because I look at you, I'm familiar with your background. I know you wrestled a whole bunch. And, when you look at him and you're trying to size yourself up against Carrillo, like, do you feel like that's where like you really have like the biggest edge off of this guy?
Yeah, I honestly, I think I have an edge in every aspect of the game. The wrestling for sure. I've wrestled since I was 5 years old, and that one-on-one combat experience since I was that young, it plays a major role. He didn't have, I don't know if he had any amateur fights. I know he does a little bit of some grappling tournaments here and there, and he does have good grappling. Their gym is more based on a grappling style. So he's got some tricky stuff on the ground. I actually predicted him to win that last fight. I thought he would be able to take him down, take his back, and choke him. And he actually was able to do that in the first round. He just couldn't pull off the choke, and he ended up gassing out and got beat up in the second. So yeah, I mean, I think I do have a grappling advantage, but I think I also have an advantage on the feet. And I think he's gonna look to try to take me down. In all of his fights, they've gone to the ground, and he's kind of wanted to get in those more grappling exchanges. I don't think he's as comfortable on his feet. So we'll see what happens. I'm ready to bang wherever it goes. I haven't had too many guys exploit a grappling game plan on me. I've only defended a couple takedowns here and there. And I think that's because guys know that, when you run into my hips, it's like running into a brick wall. So, you best be careful when you start spamming takedowns on a guy like me.
When I think of you, I would almost call you Cage Warriors Michael Chandler, because you have the wrestling in your back pocket, but you've knocked people out time and time again. And we go back to 2022, 2021, and that's really what kind of like got you back on the scene. Like everyone was talking about you. That's why we got that Carrillo fight, because of what you did with your hands. And can we expect to see more knockouts from the Nomad in 2024?
So, it's a good comparison, because I do like to use my hands. I was always a fan of the guys that were more sprawl and brawl type of fighters, the Justin Gaethjes are some of my favorite guys to watch. Because I got into the sport to fight. I had a wrestling career, and I told myself coming into my MMA career, I was like, I'm not just going to be one of these guys that goes in there and looks to wrestle. I've done that, and I failed at it. I came up short over and over in my high school career and college career. It's like, now I get to punch people in the face, and open up a whole nother bag of tricks. So, yeah, I mean, I'm looking to hurt people, so I think I don't necessarily carry like a ton of like power. It's not like I hit you and you feel every shot, but I hit you clean. I've got good accuracy, and I throw in combination, and I think I can beat you to your chin. So that's what you've seen in some of my past knockouts, is just being able to get to guys' chins with those 4-ounce gloves, and they crack pretty hard. So I think we can definitely expect some more knockouts. If I gotta utilize my wrestling to get a W at the end of the day, a W is very important to get. But the fans love seeing a slobber knocker.
Yes, sir. Well, you're also in an interesting spot. Like, you've been in Cage Warriors for quite a while. The UFC, they know who you are. You train at like one of the like biggest gyms in Southern California. And, like all things considered, I pretend I'm you for a second. There are a lot of pathways to the show. There's obviously competing for the Cage Warriors featherweight title. That's one potential option. But then the other reality of it is the UFC, they're running shows every week. A lot of these shows are happening in the Apex. And last time I checked, San Diego, that's not that far away from Las Vegas. So when you kind of like take into account everything, where do you kind of like see yourself? What pathway do you kind of see yourself in terms of what makes sense to hit the UFC level?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always, kind of game planning and preparing for the future, obviously. Contender series is the easiest way, it seems like, or the most frequent way that guys get to the UFC nowadays. Short notice is another option. I would have liked to get on this Ultimate Fighter season that they got running right now, or it might have finished up. Couldn't get on that. I wish they'd come back to San Diego. I got to corner Dominic Cruz in San Diego, his last fight, and, in Pechanga Arena. It'd be nice if they came there and, maybe I could sneak on a short notice or an undercard or something like that. I think as far as my record goes and with the knockouts that I have, I think I'm right there. I'm right there. I've said that for the last couple fights. But I'm trying not to focus on it as much because, like I said, I was always in such a hurry to get there, get to the UFC, I got to get paid. I gotta support this career and whatnot. But I'm trying to, take a step back, be a little more patient, enjoy my work, enjoy the process of getting better and just keep beating dudes up until I get the call. But yeah, the call will come.
One final question here for you. Cage Warriors 173. We've talked about your opponent. We've talked about where you are at this stage in your career. Been about a year since we've seen you. There are a lot of people that are going to be tuning in from all over the world specifically to watch you fight because like, what's this guy been up to? We haven't seen him for a minute. What can your fans, your supporters, people around the world, what can they expect to see come fight night?
Yeah, so it'll be basically 1 year since my last fight, and it's been a fast year. It's gone by super fast. I've gotten a lot better. I really have. I know that's what everybody says, but I think this will be my best showing, and I'm gonna have a lot of fans there. I got some guys traveling. I got probably 35 people traveling. Family and friends coming out here to have a good time and watch me fist fight. Um, you know, and yes, I do have fans internationally. I've had some really good support overseas, which is really fun to see. Uh, they know what to expect. I don't get in boring fights. Like I said, I didn't get in this to wrestle or whatever. I'm gonna come out and I'm gonna try to hurt dudes. I'm gonna put violence on people. For as long as the fight lasts, and for this one, I'm hoping that it goes a little longer so that I can, really open up and show what I'm capable of. I think, sometimes my fights have ended quickly, and then my last fight where I kind of got beat up a little bit over the duration of the fight, I'd kind of like to be on the opposite end of that and do the ass whooping for 15 minutes or so that people get their money's worth. But at the end of the day, it's beautiful violence. That's it.
That's it indeed. Well, if there's any supporters, any teammates, any sponsors that you need to talk about before I let you go, let's do it.
Yeah, I'm training down at Azteca Boxing in Bonita. Those guys are really cool. I got a lot of good teammates and coaches, but my sponsors, man, that's really where the people that don't get a lot of praise, and they really do keep me afloat. The company I used to work for, Huff Construction, they've constantly supported my MMA career even after my departure from working for them. My other sponsors that have been with me for a while, Steve Coulter from Copper Electric here in San Diego. This dude's awesome, man. He's such a nice guy and helps me out every camp. Xavier Murtaugh with McGregor Murtaugh. He's from Australia. This guy literally just watched me fight on Cage Warriors and like hit me up and like told me he wanted to help me out. He's the nicest guy, family man, just, supports my career and helps me financially. I wouldn't be able to get through these camps. We were talking about it before the show started about how expensive it is to live here in California. And these guys truly do get me through my camp so that I'm able to perform at my best. But yeah, my wife back home, she's incredible, supports me a ton. She's watching our 9-month-old son right now while I'm off at camp. So all the respect and praise to her as well, with Mother's Day coming up. So yeah, but you as well, man. Tyler, I appreciate this. You know, it's hard what you guys do. The MMA media doesn't always get the best press. And, you know, I think you're the kind of guy that you're just trying to help out fighters like myself and get our stories out there and get the word out to the world about our competitions coming up. And I truly respect that. So thank you very much for that.
Well, thank you for the kind words. Some of us are idiots, though, and don't deserve the praise, but I appreciate it. I'll take the compliment.
There's always bad apples, brother, you know.
Damon, I appreciate you pulling up with me today. I wish you the best of skill in your upcoming fight, and I look forward to having you back on the program real soon, sir.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate you.